that the WNBA players were wearing the shirts, pay us what you owe. They only receive currently, J.A., 9% of basketball related income. They're in collective bargaining talks. There's been talk of, a lockout, strike, whatever you want to call it, next season, which would be a really bad look for everybody involved. Are you surprised, Jay, just from what I've seen in this very small Twitterverse, and granted, it is a cesspool, that there is such an aversion to, let's just, the brass tacks of the women saying, hey, can we get more than 9% of basketball related income? Can we maybe get 25%? I'm not saying that's what they're asking for, but are you surprised that there's such an aversion to that publicly?
Well, Twitter, or what used to be Twitter, is just useless for gauging public sentiment, my final straw with that was I was trying to get some, on the ground information during the LA fires in January. And I went on there and I, put the keyword and hashtags LA fires, and all I got was like all this anti-DEI stuff. So like, we saw that when the Grok bot just started, went straight past whoever else you want to talk about. It went straight to Hitler, when people started talking about stuff, the level of anti-Semitism on there was just set at the highest setting, they admitted it was trained on this. So, so the notion of discourse on Twitter, I think is dead. So it's not a valid gauge. What I think does matter is the fact that the people in the arena were chanting, I forget specifically, pay the players or pay them, so like the base, you got the base, the people that care about the product, they're on the players' side, to an extent that I don't think we've seen in another major sport. Right. We've seen this for the members of the U.S. women's soccer team. The national team had people at the rally chanting pay them. So I think that's important. The people on Twitter, they're not buying tickets to go see the WNBA. The people in the arena have the players back. So that had to be a very powerful moment for them. So the question is, so if you strike, you certainly lose some momentum,
right?
This mainstream popularity that they're gaining in these television ratings that they're gaining, you lose momentum from that. But I don't think your core supporters would tune out. They've made it clear who they stand. They're on the players' side. So they're not going to want to punish. They're going, if anything, when the arenas open back up after the strike or lockout, particularly a strike, I think they'll be back, hey, we're happier now knowing that more of our money is going to the players. Here, let me write a check for some season tickets. So this is an unusual dynamic, Vinny, that we really haven't seen before, because, really the era of strong unions and player activism and strikes, started in the 1970s. There was a good book, I don't know if I have it on the shelf here, but it was about the NFL. And, when the NFL players first started fighting for rights and unionizing and doing that, a lot of the language, the signs, the picket signs and the protest signs that they had, a lot of the language borrowed from the language of the civil rights movement. And it echoed that language, and that didn't go over so well.
Right.
The meat and potatoes NFL fans, right? And so that's kind of been that tradition. Even though Americans, by and large, have favored labor over ownership, and Vinny, you obviously well aware of this coming up in the union town of Detroit, when it came to sports, they favored the owners, and that had to do with the way the media covered it and portrayed these athletes as, spoiled millionaires, et cetera, playing a game. How can you want anything? You get paid to play pro sports. We'd all trade places with you. So you had no sympathy from the media. And again, in the particularly in the NFL, you're using language that reminds people of the civil rights that people weren't really thrilled about granting. And so, but now, there's been a shift in, by and large, after union support has declined, it's been increasing in recent years, not quite back to where it was like in the 50s or so, but it's on the upswing. Any backlash against like the billionaire oligarch class, and in particular, this groundswell of support for women's sports all those things combine to put the WNBA players in a uniquely strong position, even though they might have the least amount of leverage, because despite the popularity, right, we're still not anywhere close to generating the revenues of the NBA or the NFL, et cetera. But there's still this upswell. You have the public support. I think it's worth the risk for them to strike if that's what it's going to take to get the type of collective bargaining agreement terms that they want.
Here's two things that I want people to understand, because we always hear, oh, they're always losing money, always losing money. For one, anyone can cook the books to make things look however they want them to look. I remember during the 2011 lockout, it was all the teams were losing money. And I sat back and I asked Self, and I said, Self, if all these teams are losing money, why are all these people trying to buy these teams?
Right.
If it's a poor investment, higher valuations, right? I give you a perfect example. The Golden State Valkyries, right? Their valuation, I think, is expansion team, y'all. Expansion team. I think it's $550 million. Now, by comparison, J.A., I covered the Detroit Pistons in 2010 when their team was for sale. You probably don't remember the listing price, J.A. I'm going to tell you the listing price, what they were sold as. No, they were sold for what listed as, y'all, $320. Wow, I guarantee you that was not what they were paid. And that was in 2011. So what I'm saying to augment Jay's point is, with all these new teams, with the expansion that's coming in, with 5 new teams coming together before 2030, I believe, was it Cleveland, Detroit, a few more, right? Toronto, Philly, not Philly. Cleveland, Detroit, Philly. I mean, Cleveland, Detroit, Toronto. Those are 3. And I feel like it was 2 more, right? But with all those teams coming in, forgive me for not remembering the 2 teams. I got island brain right now. I still got sand in my brain. But those people would not be making huge investments for the future into the league if it were a losing proposition, if it were charity. And second point, J.A., as we know now in this new media age, live sports rights means more than anything in the streaming era. And if whatever you want to say about the WNBA, if you don't like the players, if you only like Caitlin Clark, whatever it is, they're at the doorstep because they have live sports. They have a valuable thing in a very volatile marketplace. Of course they should get more. It's just a matter of figuring out how much more.
I was at an event last month. Alex Rodriguez was speaking. And I think one of his last thoughts was that investing in women's sports right now is the best investment you can make, because it's not overvalued. You know, the Lakers are overvalued. The Celtics were overvalued. I'm sorry, they're not. The Lakers, without owning a building, you don't even get to buy the building. $10 billion, they're overvalued, you know?
Right.
Women's sports, women's franchises are undervalued. This might be the last time we can say that, right? So it's a tremendous buying opportunity. And so even if it means you're eating some yearly operational losses, if you're going to increase the amount of revenue that you share with the players, you know you're going to make it up on the back end. You know, you got a shot at, put it this way, if you buy a NBA or MLB, NFL team, do you really think you got a shot at a 10x, you know, increase in value? I don't know how many multiples the Lakers. I think Jerry Buss bought them for like 70 million or something like that. The whole purchase, the Lakers, the Kings, and the Forum, you know, and they just sold for 10 billion. You're not going to get that type of ROI on any existing men's league franchise. I think you got a shot at, you know, or at the very least 2. You know, if you bought the Valkyries right now at 500, you know, the chance you could sell them for $1 billion in 10 years, you know, and double. You know, do you really think whoever, you know, the Mark Walter group that bought the Lakers, do you think they're going to be able to double, you know, when they sell? I mean, at some point, we're like reaching we got to be reaching the upper limitations.
Yeah, we got to be reaching a bubble. We got to be reaching a bubble.
We're nowhere close to the upper levels of the valuations on these women's sports franchises. So again, you could lose 50 million, you know, a year, I think, and still sell them at a profit. You know, you'll bank a lot of money if you bought a team today and you have operational losses every year. You're still going to walk away, because this is the prime time to buy into, a women's professional sports franchise.
You don't have to agree, but you have to click subscribe. Debate lives here. Yahoo Sports is where the conversation starts. Bring your takes to the comments.